But yes, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. Really happy to see a lot of new faces, a lot of familiar faces that are part of this group. Can I get a quick show of hands of how many new members are here? Great, this is awesome. Typically half of the crowd is always new, so that's great for networking. So to kick things off tonight, I want to go over the IoT Waterloo team. We got myself, Katrina, Anita, and Matt. We started 2014, grown to over 1,200 members. The goal of our events is to meet somebody new and to learn something new. We typically have two expert speakers, then we break out for networking, then follow up with some community announcements. So tonight we're going to have Hugh Hind and Lara Swift. So that's going to be exciting to hear their stories. And just some general housekeeping. If anybody doesn't know, the washrooms are at the back left. And we're going to support the Boathouse here tonight, our venue sponsor. Buy drinks and food. Everybody's already started. That's awesome. And then half hour networking in between speakers. So let's get started right off the hop. Hugh Hind.
Folks. When I was talking about the talk tonight, talking to Ian, you suggested I start talking with a little bit of background about myself. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's a hideously boring topic, so I'll try and run through that in about 5 minutes or so. Background for me, I started as an electronic engineer, focusing on digital signal processing, process design, and at the same time. I think when you're going through university, you have these defining moments. So to give you a little bit more insight into me, I'll describe one of mine. Think about one of the normal engineering labs at this very, very boring circuit. You needed to measure resonance frequencies. So for anyone who doesn't know about this, the goal was apply voltage to a circuit, watch the output, measure the output, get two little hills and the dip in between, right? So went into the lab, set everything else up on autopilot, not really thinking, got the two little peaks, measured them, first peak twice as high as the second peak. So looked at the model, that wasn't what the model said. So being an enterprising engineering student, I did what everyone would do, called the TA over and said, is that right? TA looks at me and says, nope, those two peaks should be the same height. So sigh, go back, reset up the experiment, measure all the things, two frequencies at the right level, first peak twice as high as the second peak. Okay, too late to do anything about it, go home, get some food. But I'm a bit obsessive, so during the evening I sat there thinking about why was I getting this wrong, and eventually decided to get up really early the next morning, go into the lab and try it again. Now if anyone really knows me, getting up really early in the morning means intense commitment on my particular side, because I'm not sure that's anything that any normal human really does. So went back to the lab, set everything up really, really carefully, did the measurements, two frequencies, nice resonant peaks, first peak twice as high as the second peak. Okay, so started getting a little bit suspicious at that time, went back, looked at the model, tried to put the data in, showed two peaks, same height as each other. So something's not right here. Went back to the theory, realized that there were lots and lots of assumptions behind that model. So I went back and reworked out what the model should be, keeping all the second order terms, not throwing away the imaginary parts, etc., etc., etc. Landed up getting a much more complex result out, put my data into the complex results, got the two frequencies, first peak twice as high as the second peak. Ah, bingo. So wrote up my lab results, added the appendix to show how I derived the model, submitted it, and sat back waiting for my A. Everyone's probably got the story by then. C minus, ringing around my graph, your two peaks should be the same height. So, what did I learn from this? A couple of things. A simple model never describes reality. If you add complexity to somebody else's life, they will not reward you for it. And if the world seems to be against you, find a couple of friends, go out, grab a beer, and the world will be better after that. Okay. So that's my defining moment, and I think the comment on that is, folks, if you need a beer, feel free to head over to the bar and grab one. Just to wrap up, I finished my degree, did a mini thesis on superconducting computers, landed up getting interested in the algorithms and the hard problems, NP hard problems for anyone who's in that area. Went into mathematics for a while, got a PhD while I was in the UK, worked just outside London on the M4 corridor, and eventually my wife got one of these offers that you can't possibly refuse to work in Canada. So I did the logical thing that any normal married person would do. My wife had this great offer, I could be a kept man, so I moved to Canada with it. So arrived in Canada, landed up working at the University of Waterloo on probabilistic algorithms. Everyone's got an interest, let's talk afterwards, way too long to talk about now. Landed up getting interested in cryptography and information theory compressions, and landed up working at Research in Motion. So I started working with the guys in Research in Motion about 1995 time frame, and there were about 40 people. So about the size of the company that most of us are working for now. Landed up joining them about 18 months later, worked on the security system, the crypto system with her little, so co-designed that crypto system with her. Landed up moving into applications, and that was another defining moment in my career. Applications have this characteristic that everybody has an opinion on what an application should do, and from their perspective, everybody is right. So if you're designing applications, your probability of making your customers satisfied is at most 1 over the total number of customers you actually have. So the more successful you have, the less happy you're actually going to be. This is sort of like golf. The better you get at golf, the fewer times you get to swing at the ball, the less success you have. So this was an area I want to get out of. No applications, no golf. When BlackBerry offered me the opportunity to go and work in wireless, I grabbed it, and pretty well that's where I've been ever since. Wireless is great. You have these things called certification tests. You pass the certification test, bingo, you're right. You don't pass the certification test, you're wrong. If you want to know anything more about certification tests, listen to Lara. She's the expert in the room. She knows a hell of a lot more about it than me. Okay, so that's background on me. What about cognitive systems? So Cognitive Systems at its heart is a company focused on silicon chip design and a really advanced processor design. So the idea is that there are certain problems where you can just buy an off-the-shelf processor or computer, write software, and solve it. There are some other problems where the amount of data you have to process or the amount of time that you have to process the problem really requires you to both design the processor and design the software to solve the problem, the algorithm to solve the problem at the same time. And that's really what's at the core of Cognitive Systems as a company. Co-design of hardware and software simultaneously, and being able to do it fast enough to get your product to market. In terms of the expertise that we have in the company, algorithms, chip design, but it's not regular chip design, it's the ability to capture analog signals, so continuously varied signals, and digitally process them together. The challenge with doing that is analog signals get affected whenever you introduce noise, and digital circuits are extremely noisy. They generate lots and lots of noise, so you've got to be really careful in terms of the design that you put together. So expertise, as I said, algorithms, chipset design, mixed signal chipset design, wireless areas, and advanced digital processing. What our business is, we are actually in the space that we call spectrum inspection. Now, if anyone's trying to put that one together, and for anyone who's not in the science side of the picture, spectrum is the stuff that the government sells at about $100 million a megahertz, right? If you're in the US, it's about $1 billion a megahertz. Really neat thing about this business model, you license it out at $100 million a megahertz, and 10 years later, the licensee gives it back to you, and you sell it back to them at another $100 million a megahertz. If we could do that in private industry, we'd be done, right? Great business model. The challenge, though, is that there's only a certain amount of spectrum that's really useful for communication purposes. And in Canada, at least, most of that has actually been licensed out already. So, estimate is in 2014, about 15% of the spectrum, the total capacity of the spectrum, was currently being used, and almost all the spectrum had actually already been licensed out. That sounds fine, 15% is not much in terms of use, but the growth rate is phenomenal. It's about 5% a month. And if you turn that around, that means by about 2018, the spectrum usage will increase by about 800%. Okay? I remember my early comment about simple models don't really predict reality, so I'm not putting my life on the line that we're going to run out of spectrum in 2018. But you certainly have to start looking at it, and the things that you have to start anticipating are things like congestion and interference and common usage of channels, of the spectral channels. All of that makes things very, very difficult. You've got multiple users of the same spectrum, they've got to cooperate, and effectively you have to be able to investigate that spectrum and see what's going on. Now, if you have a problem like interference currently, what happens when the carrier becomes aware of it? Well, quite bluntly, when the customer calls the carrier the first time, the carrier says, that's very interesting, and ignores them, right? About the time when the 20th customer from the same area phones in and says, we have a problem, they go find Fred and Betsy, who have about 10 years of RF experience behind them and about another 10 years of education and training in engineering. They put them in a truck, which has about $500,000 worth of equipment in it, and they say, go out to the area and find out what's going wrong. Now, another thing about life in general, apologies to anyone who's seriously religious, but the true ultimate power in the universe is Murphy, as of Murphy's law. So when Fred and Betsy jump in the truck, right, they drive it out to the area, about 10 minutes before they get there, the problem stops happening. Or if Murphy's in a really, really foul mood, it doesn't stop happening, it just moves to wherever they were previously before they actually got there, right? So the key point about it is problems on a wireless network are sporadic, and they tend to move from place to place. So what you really need is a network of sensors that will enable you to monitor your wireless network continuously. And it doesn't really matter whether you're a cellular carrier offering smartphone coverage, or if you're running a business and you're just setting up a Wi-Fi network, or even if you're an individual with a home network, same problem, right? So the fundamental idea behind Cognitive Systems' business model is we've taken that $500,000 truck and we put it in a sensor which is roughly about this big, right? Costs a couple of $100, and the idea is instead of driving your truck around all the time, just drop your sensors, nail them to a wall, and you've got continuous coverage. That way Murphy will have to be a whole bunch more advanced to beat you, but probably will work out how to do so. Okay. The interesting thing in producing it, so key customers on that side, people who run networks who don't really want to know how the network runs, right? Networks are like electricity. Honestly, I don't really care about turbines and frequencies and parameters and transmission lines and all the rest of it. I just want to turn the light switch on and have the light come on, right? Same with people who are using wireless networks. They don't really want to know anything about Maxwell's equations or anything else like that. Helmholtz solutions, they just want to turn their unit on and have connectivity, right? Make the phone call, have the phone call work. So the trick here is anybody who runs a network who doesn't really have the time or the inclination to learn about how it runs, this is a unit that will give insight and essentially give a warning when the network is starting to run into problems, when there's significant interference, when there's a lack of coverage, when the local access point has failed. So that's part of our business. The interesting thing about the other half of the business is communication frequencies come in 3 layers. Low frequencies, which are about 700, 800, 900 megahertz. Roughly, when you try and place a call on a wireless, on a smartphone, that's the frequency you're operating on. Very quickly, after you place the call, they throw you up into a mid-frequency, around 1800, 1900, 2100 megahertz. Key on that one is very small cells, so when you lose, you drop the call, but that's your tough luck. You paid for the call at that particular point. And then there's the high frequencies around 2500 megahertz, 2.5 gigahertz, which is where things like Wi-Fi live. So this unit basically has the ability to pick up low frequencies, pick up medium frequencies, pick up high frequencies. And the interesting thing about RF is it's essentially the same thing as light, right? It's an electromagnetic wave with a particular frequency, intensity, and phase. If you think about light, we get to see this nice image of our surroundings, and essentially you can think of light as there's a red component, a green component, and a blue component. Red low frequency, green mid frequency, blue high frequency. So interestingly enough, if you can pick up RF frequencies in a low band, a mid band, and a high band, and you've got reasonably continuous coverage, you can actually detect a lot about your surroundings based on picking up those electromagnetic waves. Think of it, the analogy to think of is if you see everything, if you see a picture in black and white, you can get a certain amount of information from it. If you see that same picture in a color view, you can get vastly more information almost instantly. And the same thing applies. So if you think about the 3 colors we can normally see, red, green, blue, right? And you add another 3 wireless colors to the picture, you can see a whole bunch more about your environment. RF has nice properties. Things which are opaque to light, like these walls, are largely transparent to RF. RF bends, so you can see around corners about it. You can pick up a third characteristic. So when we are looking at light, there's an intensity of the light, which is basically the amplitude of the wave. And there's a frequency of the light, which is basically the color, right? So brightness and color. With RF, you've also got phase. So to give you an idea of how phase works, suppose we could detect phase. You'd be able to tell how many corners your light has bounced around. So suppose for a moment you're in a long zigzag tunnel, right? And up ahead of you is a wireless access point with a light on it. Just being able to see regular light, you'd see this faint glow and know that there's a light ahead of you. If you could also see the RF, right, you could tell how many corners you'd have to traverse to get to that particular light. So you get a whole bunch more information. Now, unless you're a rat living in a storm drain, I'm not quite sure why that example would be terribly useful to you, but hopefully everyone gets the idea that there's more information about our surroundings. So as far as cognitive business is concerned, there's also a business about gathering more information about your environment. And things like motion detection, crowd flows, tracking velocity of vehicles, all very, very natural and all very, very easy from an RF perspective. Okay? And how am I doing for time? Okay, perfect. So let me keep going a little bit then. This is essentially what cognitive is about. The question I often get asked is, why here? Why Waterloo? And I wanted to talk about that for a few minutes. really it's about opportunity. Technology doesn't evolve continuously. It makes leaps, right? So if you think about the fairly recent one, mid-1970s, mid-1980s, the new ideas around integrated circuits, essentially internet protocols, 10-base-T cables, how you have high-speed transmission cables, and so on. Design of memory chips and computers all came together at the same time. What we got was the internet and distributed processing, right? Everybody had that ability to access vastly more information and process it locally. It changed our lives. It also made a couple of regions in the world, the most notable one being Silicon Valley, incredibly exciting places to be, and also incredibly wealthy, right? Well, folks, we're about to do it again, right? We're heading towards a new generation of products, and there are a bunch of cornerstone technologies associated with it. It's no longer a digital world. We're back into sensors picking up analog, permanently changing signals. I think half the people in this room are working for a company that's somehow engaged in the sensor field. You've got things like nanotechnology occurring at the University of Waterloo, right? We've got quantum computing. Nobody connects things by wires anymore. Wireless is the name of the game. Digital signal processing is another key. These things are the cornerstone technologies for the next generation of products that we're going to build out there. And by a bunch of probably careful foresight, cooperation, particularly in things like the academic institutions around here, a lot of hard work, and to be honest, just a bit of luck. Waterloo has all of them, right? All those key cornerstone technologies. So the question is not really, why are you here? It's why on earth would you be anywhere else, right? This is the place to be, folks, right? You know, we have the ability to make the future here. So, you know, that's the fundamental what about Waterloo. But there's one more thing. We've got to be prepared to change, right? And I think a lot of that is beginning to happen, but we've got to think about it more. If you think about tech products, which is in a way what Waterloo is very much associated with now, tech products they have a lifetime. You come up with the idea, you need to make your product quickly, because about 10 years later, that idea is obsolete, the product is old, right? If you think about the traditional way of exploiting an idea or a product, you created this massive company over a 25, 50-year period, assembled a vast collection of experts under one roof, built your products, built up your customer base. It's not going to work anymore, right? We don't have time to build those massive companies like Motorola, Hewlett-Packard, Nortel, right? We've got to do it differently. And we've got to do it really, really fast. Now, what does fast mean? Fast means we've got to communicate better. So if we're going to communicate better, the problem with communication is you create too many layers of indirection. You can't really communicate effectively. Also, you can't make the group too big, because otherwise not everybody's listening or communicating with each other. So you start getting these limits on the size of a company that you can deal with. About 65 people is my sweet spot. That's about the biggest company can get. Maybe if you're really good, 100. If you're not quite so good, somewhere around 50. But 50 to 100 is probably the sweet spot for a current company. What does that mean? When I was working at Research and Motion Library, I counted the number of different areas of expertise you needed to get a product out the door. Right? About 26. So suppose you've got a company of 50, you've got to have 26 different areas of expertise. You can't really create teams. At best, some of the areas you've got one person to do it. Not really the way to go. Right? Groups of equally skilled people will always outperform. So groups of cooperative, equally skilled people will always outperform an individual. Okay? One of those standard things, if anyone's done personality and that type of test. That's one of the things that becomes binding in the office. So you really need to collect small groups of experts in order to exploit an idea. Right? But if you collect those small groups of experts, you run into the communication problem. Okay? And you create these big monster companies, and big monster companies are going to take too long to assemble, and it's going to fail because of communication challenge. So we've got to change things, folks. Right? And we've got an opportunity to do it in Waterloo, which is really fascinating and stunningly exciting. Right? We've got to get to the idea that doing everything within one company is no longer the way to do it in 2015. Right? It certainly won't be by 2020. We've got to get used to creating these small groups of people that communicate really, really fast, and then acquire their expertise, the expertise which is not absolutely central to the area they're concentrating on, from another group in town, right? Another group that's accessible in town. So we've got to start thinking about individual company success in Waterloo. We've got to start thinking about regional success. Either we're all successful or we all fail, right? Okay. So, a handful of things that we really need to change about our thinking. Not big companies, small companies, right? Failure of an individual idea, not such a bad thing. If 1 in 3 of your efforts that you're after isn't failing, you're not being ambitious enough. Right? So we've got to be prepared to take risks. We've got to be prepared for a certain number of those to fail. If you do everything as we're all silos and we're all operating by ourselves, that one failure can be catastrophic. If you look at it on a regional basis and say, we're going to start 30 companies, right, and 10 of those are going to be successful, and the folks who work for the other 20 companies have quite a whole bunch of experience and are going to be absorbed into the 10 companies, it doesn't really matter all that much exactly which idea is going to be successful. You don't have to spend all that time guaranteeing your success. You can just get on with it, develop the idea, and move at the current IoT level. Right? Another couple of things. You've got to have long-term vision, and you've got to have a degree of security. That's where governments come into it. Right? Governments can have a long-term vision, and they can take the big picture view into account. They also have a degree of neutrality. Right? The city, the province, the federal government is not focused on any one company's success. So it can set up something like Communitech or Velocity or Accelerator Center or something like that. And academia has, the academic institutions have a part to play here as well, right? Where you can get people who naturally otherwise wouldn't cooperate to sit down and talk to each other, right? This is a great example of people across the board sitting down and actually getting to know each other and building that that we actually need, right? So smaller companies, faster moving, cooperation, government industry split, crazy idea, where we're either jointly successful or we're not, so let's start working together. What's the challenge with IoT? You're taking very, very complex measures of your environment and you're trying to present them to people who don't have time to be experts in those areas. So we need to break down basically the distinction between tech company and a arts, digital media, communication type company. It's the same thing. In order to have a successful product, you've got to build the product, and then you've got to think about the communications, how to make its use intuitive, how to get the concepts and the information across to people. That's what is really the basis of arts. How to communicate. What are those fundamental ideas? How do people think? How do you get the ideas of them? So no more science, engineering versus arts. Same team, right? And then finally, we've got to stop this business about careers, right? A background in the UK. Career in the UK is start in a company, watch your Facebook page for 7 years, get promoted to middle manager, right? As a middle manager, you're a far more professional person, so you move up to looking at your LinkedIn page for the next 7 years, and eventually get promoted to director. At that point, you give up LinkedIn and say, okay, really, golf is the networking system, so you don't play golf for 7 years and become an executive, right? 1950s style management. Not really going to work anymore. We've got to get used to the idea that at times in our careers, the person who's got the greatest insight into the idea needs to lead the team. And that's going to change from time to time. So the idea of progressively growing your career, staying in the same institution, reporting to the same person, got to change. We've got to get used to, for these 2 years, I'm reporting to Mary because she knows what's going on. I'm going to apply a certain set of skills, and 2 years later, Mary might be reporting to me from an organizational leadership perspective. In fact, forget the reporting thing. It doesn't really make sense anymore. Right? Initially, I'm working with Mary, later Mary is working with me. Right? So, smaller companies, more collaborative, no art sciences mix. Get used to seeking expertise outside your corporate silo. Right? And government industry cooperation. And if we can pull that off, folks, this has got to be the most exciting place on the planet to be in.
We have 10 minutes for a quick Q&A if somebody wants to put up their hand.
Any questions?
The notion of plug-and-play personnel certainly sounds appealing.
Yep.
The issue I have with that is someone who has been the plug and play is that I come into situations which require profound knowledge of the domain space. How would you address that in the model?
Folks, I think you build up the knowledge of the domain space within the individual team, right? If you're after a particular area, that effort does need to be led where those core knowledges are actually constructed by a group that's got that core knowledge. What I'm referring to when I'm saying we've got to be prepared to pull in knowledge from outside is, take an example of cognitive. We have to know how to design a chip. We have to know a lot about wireless. We've got to have a fair knowledge of software design, right? But if we're going to build a product, we also need people who know about supply chain management. Right? That's not necessarily a skill that we have to have inside the company. We've got to have people who know how to position the product, marketing expertise, not necessarily a skill that you have to have inside the company. So it's less about the hard technical skill, it's more about the additional areas of expertise that you need to put together to get your product out the door. Okay? And will we have to become a little bit more generalist? Yes, I think so. So in order to be able to communicate with those experts, we're going to have to know a lot about our own areas, but we're going to have to know a little about all the other areas as well. And again, right, the advantage that we've got great academic institutions in the world, right? Number of colleges, number of universities. And those forums can be a source to provide at least introductory level of understanding into the various different fields.
Got time for one more? Good? Okay.
Perfect. Time to go back to my chair. Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you all got to know Hugh because I forgot to give his credentials all before I introduced him, so my apologies. But we're going to break out for a half an hour, then we're going to come back and reconvene. Thank you. So everybody's gotten to meet new people. That's one of the big goals here tonight. Meeting new people and also learning something new. So, all right. Everybody, we're going to get things kicked off again. Get everybody's attention. We're going to get things started off again, and we will have another networking session at the end of the night. So the people that you're meeting, keep that up, and that's one of the big goals here tonight. So let's kick this off and get things going again with Lara Swift. She has a Master's of Engineering from the University of Waterloo, and she is the CEO of Swift Labs. who focuses on wireless technology. So please welcome Lara.
As my husband would point out, I'm the COO, although he says, you say that very easily, like you should be the CEO. So I'm COO, my husband is COO, my husband is the CEO. We started the company together in 2014. We were both unexpectedly laid off from a large smartphone manufacturer. 6 weeks apart. Can you hear me okay? I got the mic all right? Okay, good, thanks. So at that point we kind of went, okay, what do we do now? Because that really wasn't in our worst case scenario to be let go such a close time frame. And he's like, wow, you know what? We should start a company. And I'm thinking, what? Why is that something that we want to do? And he started going through all the reasons of everything that was happening in the region. He had a few more weeks on me on being out here and seeing what was going on. He had a few more trips into Communitech. He'd done a lot more networking. He has this huge soccer network with all these people at all these different companies. So he had all this insight that he was trying to educate me on. So okay, yeah, that sounds good. Well, we have different areas of expertise. Okay, good, yeah, that's a good balance. And you know, we play well together. So okay, let's give that a try. So we took our exit money from the said smartphone manufacturer and thought, okay, this is good. This is going to give us a lot of time. We can, you know, we can get an office, we can hire people. Let's stay here. We've had offers from other places to go, like in the valley. We don't want to leave this area because there's something about this area that makes us really connected, and we like the spirit, we like the energy. Plus, we wanted to be able to keep the expertise that we gained and retain it here and help support other companies. So one of the big things that we started hearing about was the Internet of Things, all the hardware that people were starting to get excited about. People wanting to build hardware have to go through a whole bunch of different things that they probably have never done before in productizing or commercializing something to actually be able to sell. You have to go through regulatory certification and any other kind of wireless certification. So cellular, GPS, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. So that's all stuff that we had experiences with previously from BlackBerry. And those are rather unique experiences. Unless you work for a major smartphone manufacturer, it's not something that you gain a lot of insight into. And when you've been put through it many times, through numerous iterations of phones, through all the different global carriers and markets, it's something that becomes a really unique skill. So you know all the players in that space, you know all the vendors, you know all the test equipment, you know all the ins and outs and the pitfalls. So about a month after we started, we had some of the previous vendors that we worked with at BlackBerry say, hey, you know what? We really like what you guys are doing, so we want to be able to support you. We think that there's a lot of potential for what you're trying to do because you have a unique skill set that people entering the hardware business don't know that they need, but they're going to need it. So we worked together with some of those test equipment providers and set up business. The hardest part, I think, of starting our business was actually finding an office that was move-in ready, that didn't involve like huge amounts of renovations with our starting to shrink budget. Commercial space is really expensive. It's one of those things that you don't really think about when you think, hey, let's start a company. We couldn't do it from our basement. If we plugged in one more thing into our house, it would probably overload everything and cause a major fire. The equipment that we needed uses a lot of power, it needs really good AC. Our house doesn't have good AC either. So we had to find a commercial space and we had to find something quickly. You can't start up a test lab if you don't have a space to show anybody your equipment. So, okay, we had to move on that really quickly. We did, we found a space where we are currently on 22 Frederick Street. Now, it's the old town hall, thank you, yes. It's the old town hall, so that's how we identify people. And it's a good space. It's about 1,800 square feet, and it's kind of furnished with leftovers from our house that we didn't need, and lots of really expensive equipment. So we thought, oh, this is great, this is great. So for the first 6 months, we spent a lot of time getting stuff set up, working out what test equipment we needed and playing around with things. And then we were like, okay, this is great, we're ready. We've networked, but nobody has hardware ready yet, so, okay, wait a little bit longer, okay. Then we had our first customer. I'll say it, our first customer was Arion, so that was really exciting because they're a big player in KW, so that was awesome. And then we waited and we thought, okay, this is interesting, and we started networking a bit more with our contacts out in the different companies, and a lot of it is people want to make sure that you're going to be around in 6 months before they have you certifying or testing some of their really new up-and-coming products. So we thought, okay, that's really good to know. So last year, about this time, we went to Mobile World Congress. We went and met a lot of customers there that we had been talking to, but they weren't really ready to commit. And once we came back from MWC, we had a couple customers in Europe, and some customers in the US, and some customers in Canada. So that was really exciting. And then things started to roll quickly. Our burn rate was quite high at that point, so we thought, okay, this is great. We've got these customers. We really need people to start paying us, and that will help us build more expertise and retain some talent, and maybe at some point pay us, because we can only live so long on dust, as I like to say. And so from there, things just started rolling. So we've been in business for just under 2 years, and we have about 60 customers right now. They range from global manufacturers, different types of wireless products, to a lot of the big local tech companies. Myovision is one of them. Hi, Curtis. Thank you. We love you guys. So one of the reasons that we started what we're doing is we felt that we had some really valuable experiences. And the more companies that were new that we started working with, we thought, okay, so these guys need certification. This is great. One of the first customers, we looked at their product and we thought, wow, what an interesting product. Okay, so we'll get this certified. Oh, look, things are failing. Open it up. Oh, interesting. Okay, we can help you with a little bit of redesign here and make sure that this actually passes the next time we run through everything for regulatory. Okay, great. So it goes through, it passes the second time. Wow, could you help us with our design of our next generation? Absolutely. So we bring in some RF engineers and some hardware engineers to balance out the expertise that we've got and be able to get ahead of the curve with our customers for their next products and be able to help them do the design ahead of time rather than trying to fix when they're already in the late stages. So that's kind of how we got to where we are now. We have 8 people. We're hoping to bring on more people as we add more projects to our upcoming cycles. And we're really excited to be able to keep really key talent and support this community. This is an amazing community. To find out if all the companies that are doing these incredible things in this area makes me really proud to be part of it, and makes me happy to have been laid off when I was laid off, as horrifying as it was at the time, because I didn't know what else was here. And there's so much out here that there's no need to go anywhere else. And it's really important for people to see that what's here is great, and to want to stick around and be part of that. So I have to also say that Hugh Hine hired me at BlackBerry, so I'm grateful to him for that opportunity and for the years that I worked for him, because I learned a lot under his mentorship. And
it's
so
a
that's
total coincidence.
And it's a total coincidence. I didn't know. And I was like, oh no, do I want to go before him or after him? Because he's going to say a bunch of really smart things, and then I'm going to sound really boring. So that's the story of how we came up with Swift Labs. And Swift is my last name. We thought, haha, that's kind of a cool name for a lab. Plus, labs at the time was kind of the cool thing that everybody was using too. So why not? We want to be part of the cool kids. So that's my story. Does anybody have any questions? So if you have any products that need to be certified, come see me. Okay.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Lara. That was really cool. I'm going to continue on with Curtis to come up to the stage to move into the community announcements. So please welcome Curtis, who's going to cover a bit about the Catalyst 167 event.
Just to plug Swift Labs a little bit. We gave them a project, I guess, just before Christmas, I think. And the theme of the RFP was, we're not sure if this breaks the laws of physics or not. We don't have very much money, and you don't have very much time, but we need you to figure out if it's possible. And so they came back with, I think it was like 8 weeks, of which 2 of them were right over Christmas. And there was a poll running in the office as to whether they would actually hit this date or not, because like it would have taken us 8 weeks to just think about whether we should start it or not. And the date that they'd given us, it turned out it fell on a Sunday. So they had to decide whether they wanted to be late or not and deliver it on Friday or Monday. And they knew there was a poll going on, so they delivered on Friday and I lost, so. Sorry? Yeah, so if any of you guys haven't, I guess, heard of Catalyst 137, so I run a company called MyVision in town, and I'm not here to talk about that, but we're out of space where we are, and I guess about 6 months ago we went to market looking for space, and basically, make a long story short, we got 15 responses back from this tender that we did looking for space, and the choice boiled down to you can either be in the core of Kitchener, which is where all the staff said they wanted to be. Made the mistake of asking them where they wanted to be. But you can't bring your manufacturing with you. You have to bring your salespeople and your engineers, and you have to leave your manufacturing somewhere else. Or you can be either in North Waterloo or down in the south end of Kitchener, and you can take your whole team together, but that's not where the people wanted to be. So being the stubborn guy that I am, I didn't like any of those options. So I sort of went back out to market and said there must be a different building. So we found this thing, very tech chic kind of building. But the nice thing about it was right in north end of downtown Kitchener. So it's about a 2-minute drive from the Tannery building. It's on Glasgow. If you're like me, you've driven by this building hundreds of times and never even seen it because it looks like that. And so we are in the process of trying to put together a project to turn this building into this building. MyVision would be one of the tenants in here. We did an event about 2 months back, or 6 weeks ago, I guess. Communitech initially gave me a boardroom that they said would hold 50 people, and I said, yeah, that's more than enough. Then we had signups rolling in, and we broke 100, and so I called Communitech and like, I'm gonna need more space. So they gave me a space to hold 150, and they said, don't get more than 150 people here because it'll break fire regulations and we'll get in trouble. We had 260 people show up at the event. So really what it showed for us is the idea of wanting to build IoT companies in the core. It was not just us. There's a lot of companies in town that are sort of feeling the same way. Software's being well served, and the rest of us are out in strip malls, wishing we could be part of the excitement. So we're working really hard to put this together. I've said to my staff, we're not making any promises. There's a lot of work to do between getting a dirty, dusty warehouse to look like that. So we're working hard on it, but to all of you guys that actually showed up at the event really helped to kind of show the investors and some of the community people that are trying to support us that there's a real cluster forming here, real need. Hugh talked a lot about people coming out of BlackBerry, as did Laura. People coming out of BlackBerry with expertise, and starting companies, going to work for companies. There's a really cool cluster happening right now. I don't even think, other than maybe the people in this room, I don't even think people can see it yet because it doesn't have an address, either physical or a brand. But we're going to try hard to put it together. So if anyone wants to know more, you can check it out, catalyst137.com. You couldn't get at Catalyst137 on Twitter because it belongs to a 14-year-old girl. But you can check us out on Twitter as well. Who knows why, but it does. So yeah, that's that story, and happy to take questions afterwards if you guys have any. So thanks.
Lenko, I'm going to bring up him to have a word about Conestoga College. I'm just going to leave that slide.
Can everybody hear me? Back? Okay, good. I asked Ian if I could have a couple of minutes just to do a little bit of a quick pitch for Conestoga College. I'm actually Chair of Engineering and Information Technology at Conestoga College, as well as Director for the Center for Smart Manufacturing, so a little bit of a tie-in with Catalyst 137. But what I want to be able to ask the audience if there are project ideas that you might have in terms of IoT-related technologies, mobile app ideas, web, etc. We have students that are seeking industry-oriented project opportunities for our capstone project courses at the college. So if you've never heard of the term capstone project, think of it as the culminating project for a given program. So I have a number of IT programs, computer programmer analyst, IT innovation design, mobile application development. Those from the IT side, again, would be looking for opportunities to work with an industry partner on applications, web solutions, etc. On my engineering side, I have my embedded systems development, as well as my wireless network infrastructure program that will be having capstone project semesters this summer. So if anybody has ideas or possible opportunities to allow industry to come to work with our students, there's really no cost to you as the industry partner, because these are students doing an academic project. So they're paid in marks, they're not paid in dollars. So it's a really, really good way, especially if you're a startup company or somebody who's got an idea, thinking about a possible way to monetize it and bring it to life. Again, we can't promise top level, amazing quality, etc. These are students. These students have a right to fail, and so the expectation is sort of alpha/beta quality. But at the same time, if you're looking for a proof of concept, it's a great way to get engaged with the students, get engaged with the college, and hopefully, if you're interested, I'm sitting over here in the corner here, and come by and grab my business card and get in contact, and we'll see what we can do. Awesome. All right. So thanks, Ian.
And just to add to Rig's thing, I actually did pitch a capstone idea, and I have 3 students working with me right now, so that's been a lot of fun. So lots of exciting things coming out of Conestoga College. And the next community announcement is in regards to Canada's long-standing tradition of responding to others in need. So I want to tap on the Syrian refugee situation. So KW, or Waterloo Region, is taking in 1,000 Syrian refugees during the last 2 months. That's a lot of new members to our community. So we're here tonight talking about a lot of tech, and we're really excited about our community. Well, there's more people coming in. So I wanted to touch light on this. And one of the things, Moeen will get up in a moment, and I'll share with other people on how to get in touch with him. One of the things I think we have is a voice to connect with other people at our forums. So hopefully there's people in here that may have used laptops or portable devices that are collecting dust. And I know I do at home too as well. So we're hoping that some people would be able to donate those to the Syrian refugees and allow them to have access to information like we're privileged to have. So that's one of the asks from a community standpoint here tonight. And Moeen, if you could stand up so people could see who you are. And yeah, so Moeen is doing a ton of work for this as well. So if anybody wants to help us out, please approach Moeen. I'm actually going to send out an announcement to our group either tomorrow or Monday with some more details. But we'd really ask for the community support that we can get access for these new landed families to have access to information. If they're going to be integrated in our community, let's welcome them with open arms and get them access to information, which we take readily for granted. Also, I want to thank our 2 primary partners. Great relationship I've had with Curtis and Myovision since this started in 2014. Curtis was a speaker at one of our early events. Huge community players. There's something to be said about companies in our own region that can come forward and say, you know what you guys have going on here is really working. Not to mention, it's a great resource for them to tap into the talent pool. So I have a tremendous amount of thanks to Myovision for supporting us since 2014 and continuing out throughout the year, as well as new partnerships being formed with Conestoga. I would really, really like to thank them tonight, so thank you guys. And then, of course, to finalize things, communities aren't formed without everybody that showed up tonight. So thank you, every one of you that showed up. The weather was looking bad, so I was kind of like, oh, this is getting scary. But everybody came out. So new people always adds diversity to this community, and there's always about half of the crowd that puts their hands up that's never been to one of these events. So we'd like to continue these going forward in 2016. Eventually migrate over to Catalyst 137 in the future and just get this thing, you know, this is just going to keep growing. There's no question about it. The talent pool here, the ideas, Waterloo is just blowing up. So I'm glad to be right in the thick of it. So let's all have a cheers to that. And I hope you learned something new and met somebody new. Cheers. Let's have another drink.